Agora passamos ao nosso próximo orador. It's time to welcome Jan Brazell, expert and editor, and I will now share my screen, or at least try to. Okay, sorry. Jan Brazell has a background in marketing and is an expert in management of cyber and information security. Jan's approach to security is that it should be a positive contributor to and for the business. He has a role in the standard development in ISO, EEC, JTC, information security, cybersecurity, and privacy protection as an expert and editor, but providing expert guidance on how to use the standards within all kind of organizations is really when he feels at home. So let's hear you, Jan Brazell. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Fortunately, not in Lisbon, which I would like very much, but who knows? It will come someday. Yes, I will talk about certification and trust. And of course, I will not go into as deep as Hamlet does in this, but I would rather do it from a business perspective. And as you say, I had a background in marketing and communication, and that's maybe the basis for me talking about this today, because actually that's one of the reasons for changing into security, to make the standards as a business enabler, basically. This is an old ad, as you see, it's from 1958. And of course, now we live in another world, slightly than in 1958, luckily. But we people have not changed. And in terms of doing business, we're still people. And to make business, you have to have trust. That is true, has always been true. But now, with the digital era that we are in, this gives us new opportunities, because I can find so much information before I meet someone. I can click and see who you are. I can visit your company on the web. I can find out what your company stands for. I might even can see what your customers you're having. I can see statements on your record, and I'm even to judge your company's reputation. Then it's much easier to say what is you want to sell to me, rather than the previous picture. Then what I have to do, find out a lot. The salesman has to do a lot before you actually meet the customer. So in the digital era, sales can start before the meeting with the salesman. And of course, also in this, certification can make a play, because if we're certified, it makes it so much easier to enable this trust. Because trust now in the digital era means that we're facing new types of risk. We already been talking about this morning, and I'm sure that all of you somehow think about this, personal data, the whole supply chain within the information and communication technology, business continuity, of course, information security, cybersecurity, how the service is provided, so I can make sure that actually I get the service that I want. And this somehow is connected to new types of risk, because our dependencies on the new technology is so much greater. As I heard this morning, that every company will be some kind of a software company. And I think that's true. So we often don't start talking about this, I mean, security and trust. I have one company that I'm working with, and the chief information security officer is not called the chief information security officer, is called the trust manager. So these two, trust and security, comes more together. And trust, to have trust, you must have prove some kind of trustworthiness. And I've just written down what I see as 7 layman terms of this. You can't have trust on your own. The trust has to be between 2 parties. And you can't just say, I have trust. No, it cannot be provided by one part. Because the other party has to perceive the trust and say, yeah, between us there is trust. And somehow we would then want to do, and in that establishing trust, we need to determine the degree of trustworthiness. And that is a combination of many factors. And these factors are more important before two parties have a relationship, a business relationship, because once you have established that, you find out more things, of course. But also this factor, in order to make business, the providing party must understand and see what's important for the other party to get that trust. So the factors has to be defined by the providing party. A simple relationship concept model is that you have a provider and you have acquirer, and somehow we need to establish trust between these two parties. So there is a need, and the provider has defined there is a need on the market, and the acquirer says, okay, I need this. And what is needed, you have to identify somehow the reasons for this. And once you know the reasons, you have to some kind of prove that to confirm that this is real. And this is really an opportunity for the provider, because if I'm able to provide this in a better sense to the acquirer, I'm more likely to do business compared to my competitor. Because of course the acquirer want to have a status where he sees it's tolerable risk to get this item or service or product, or to engage this company in some kind of business vendor or whatever. So trust of what? Of course, there is different. We're buying different things. We're buying a person. We engage in an organization to provide me consultancy services or whatever. We buy a device, we buy a system, a service, etc., or a combination of the above. And of course, this is slightly different depending on what I'm providing or what I'm buying. So the question is, if there is a certification related to this, will this help? I think so. So that's when it comes to talking a little bit about ISO, because I'm quite fascinated with ISO. I mean, I'm sitting here in Sweden, and we are talking now in theoretically anyway, or virtually in Lisbon. And the interesting bit with ISO is that it's global. I know Portugal is about the same size as Sweden in terms of population. So, and I think we both countries are highly depending on doing business on a global arena. So therefore it's interesting to use the ISO standards. And this is just funny that ISO comes from a Greek word, isos, conformity, and you can think that, oh, that's brilliant, that's why it's called ISO, but it isn't. It's just an abbreviation of International Standard Organization. So it's a bit funny. So can we trust the ISO standards? Well, standards are standards, but this is quite the way that I find out the standards are made is quite a long process. And you can see this as negative, but it's also very positive, because there's a lot of work and a lot of people that get involved in the standardization. And ultimately, ISO is under United Nations and World Trade Organization. So World Trade Organization, yeah, good. It's because it should support trade, which means business, exactly what I was talking about. So that's also very good. The standardization committee that I'm working with is called SC27, and it handles the ISO 27001, among others. So it's cyber information security and privacy, that is the scope. And there is, of course, a lot of countries participating in this. And then you see development of a standard down here, that it takes quite a long time to make an ISO standard. These are just a group within SE27. I just want to show you this because I think it's very interesting to see the different topics that are within this committee. And it's a huge committee. So you have ISO 27001 in working group 1, and then you have privacy in working group 5, and you have a lot of other, the other 3 working groups is working also very detailed into security. So this is SE27 about security, but also if you go beyond that and talk about how is the ISO way of certification. Well, to be able to have a certificate, it has to have an accreditation body. That's a national. In Sweden, it's called SVELAC, and that's an actual state agency. And then you have certification bodies that actually do the certification, like we were talking about before in the previous presentation. And then you have that issues actually the certificate to the subject of the certificate. And this is good because it's third party, which is totally independent, and it's done in the same way in Portugal, in Sweden, or wherever we go. It should be the same way. So it's very good. In ISO, there are 3 ways of getting a certificate or a conformity assessment. It could be a person, it could be a product, process, or service, or it could be an organization, and that is regulated through the schemes here, based on these 3 standards to the right here. And it's a special scheme set up for all of this. So it's also good for the sort of credibility behind an ISO standard, because the word certificate, it's not own. You can have Jan's certificate if you like, but I don't think that will be so much value. But if you have an ISO certificate, it has definitely a quality stamp on it to then again enabling trust. I've listed here just what I see as the 4 main standard when it comes to certifying an organization. It's of course, in the middle, because that's the one I'm working with mostly. ISO 27001, the Information Security Management System. Now recently also we have 27701, which is about privacy, called PIMS. And then you have business continuity, 22301, and of course service management also. These 4 are closely related when it comes to security, because you can find security aspects in all of these 4 standards. And there are of course similarities, even if they are addressing different subjects. This applies to an organization. Very briefly on 27001, maybe you all know this, but just to make sure that I'm talking about this, so you're all aware of it. It's often called the ISO 27000 series because it's easier, and there are many parts today, but these 3 parts are essential. It's the 27001 with the requirements, including Annex A that we went through. The 27002, which is guidance on the controls, and then we have 27003, which I was edited together with Raquel on 27003, which gives guidance then on the requirements. So if you want to go certified against 27001, these are the 3 main standards you should get. The certification towards 27001 is unique in the aspect that you have the management process requirements in clause 4 to 10 in 27001. And then you, of course, have the 114 controls in Annex A that you also have to consider and apply to get the magic certificate. The interesting bit with the standard at 27,001 is that it's clearly risk-based. It means that for a small company, you may have certain types of risk, while in a larger company, of course, you have a wider set of risks. But everything here should be risk-based. And the 114 controls are mostly what I see applicable to all organizations, regardless if they are 10 or if they are 100,000. But of course, also the application of especially the controls and also the management system is much easier in a small organization. So I have several cases now with small organization. We're talking about SMEs this morning, and it's so much easier for them to get this certificate in place than a larger organization. If you take time-wise, a larger organization may need years to get it fully into place, while a small organization could do it in, well, 6 months. But also, which I think is a great opportunity now, because we have 27,701 that addressing personal data. And of course, here in Europe, where we talk about GDPR, this gives a very good opportunity to address both these issues. When GDPR came in as a law, there was a lot of focus on that, understandable, but I see a lot of organizations that now say, okay, we got the personal data processes, we know that all right, but when we're actually going to protect the personal data, it's very much about security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So they see that this comes very much together. So therefore, it's very good that the 27,001 now comes into play, because 27,001 is an add-on to 27,001. So it needs 27,001 to be in place. So what are the major differences? Well, there are some minor differences. I'm just taking this very generally now. In the clauses 4 to 10 is, of course, that the policy should include privacy. And of course, that privacy should be included in the context of the organization, and of course, in the interested party, etc. And of course, privacy risk should be addressed. So that's the formal changes in 27,701 compared to 27,001. On the Annex A controls, there is a lot of guidance changes to some of the controls, but also there are 2 different annexes with new controls, depending if you are a processor or if you move this a little bit, or if you are a PII controller. And PII here stands, of course, for personal data, because in the ISO world, it's called PII, personally identifiable information, rather than personal data. So this is the difference. So now we can actually include both in our certifications. And a lot of gain for that, because it's a clear overlap. This is a question that we often run into, is that, oh, I'm certified against 27,001 or 27,701, and that means that I'm legally compliant. No, you can never use a standard to be legally compliant, but it helps you to meet regulatory requirements. But you can never claim that the certification make you legally compliant. So it's an opportunity to use that when you have regulatory requirements. So a little bit of conclusion, going back to 2021. This person here that should buy what we're selling. I know your company are certified, tell me the scope of the certification, because this gives us much more clarity in the dialogue between the provider and the acquirer. So if we are right here, it's much easier to get the trustworthiness and get the trust and sell the goods or services that we want. So by certification, trust can already start before I'm saying now the web meeting. Hopefully we meet in person, but with the meeting with the salesman anyway. So here we clearly see that standards and certification can really help business, which is why I'm doing this, basically. So in the digital era, that was it. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you so much, Jan Brazell, for your presentation, for your lesson about conquering trust, a role of the provider in the relationship with the client. And yes, we do have a few questions for you. I will start with the first one, then Luis will give you the next questions. The first one is how to establish trust in digital commerce. Will the certification itself be understood by the customer as being a trustworthy company? Thank you, Jan.
It depends. I think between organizations that could work. The more sort of the awareness we will have for this, but for the consumer, I think it's tricky. I don't think they will address this at all. So I think it's more between organizations. But of course, that is an awareness issue. I mean, I didn't know really how deep I should go into the standards today, talking to you. So there may be a need for a better communication or information about what these standards actually provides. And here also, what's coming out from the different governments is actually very important. We see here in Sweden now that a lot of government, when they actually purchasing services or from an organization, they doesn't put it as a mandatory requirement, but they have this as a plus factor if the supplier is certified. Was that an answer?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Hi, Jan. We have another question here for you. Are you listening to me?
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry. This is from Monica. How can we put the value on ISO as a quality standard that is superior to John's, as an example, if they are both performed by skilled workers? I don't know with John.
No, I didn't understand the questions quite.
I believe this is related to comparing the value of ISO as standards relating to, well, other standards that are not ISO, okay? The best practices from professionals, okay?
It's little bit, that's why I put these slides on how many people that are involved. If you take, just from my experience from SC27, each meeting is about international meetings, around 300 delegates from all around the world. And that's just the meetings. Then you have all the national experts that are contributing to the standard development. So if I take here in Sweden, we're about 50 in the group. Not all of them now active, but there are at least 25 people, experts, contributing to the standards. And if you take that then on the global scene, you understand that it's thousands of experts contributing. So I think that's one of the quality things. And also the voting system, where actually the countries has to vote, etc. Mm-hmm. And the drawback is the time. It takes time. That's the drawback, as I see it.
Yes, okay. In general, the consensus in the experience of a lot of persons gets to a better result, right?
Yeah, yes.
So
you can correct on the way, if you say so. I mean,
sorry?
You can correct things on the way. I mean,
yeah.
If there's someone saying something that is maybe not correct, maybe you get a lot of people commenting on that later on, and you find consensus that he or she is wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question. Well, we are starting to have more questions. This is good, but let's try to keep on schedules. We have one question here from Pedro. What kind of companies are applying ISO IEC 17065?
Yeah, that's on the product and services.
And why? And why, in your opinion? Sorry.
Yeah, it's that could be very specific schemes for a product or for a service. I can't answer that question specifically. I'm sorry, but it's an interesting thing that actually exists within ISO, because normally we're talking about the management system, and that's not 17 or 65.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that concept exists there. But I'm sorry, I don't have so much knowledge about that. Thank you.
I have another one that surely you have a lot to say about, I believe. Well, there are two questions here about 27701, okay, the new privacy information system, management system. But in general, these questions are about, well, the first one is about how GDPR, the implementation of 27701 is a good framework for GDPR. Another one around the same, if 27701 is a key standard regarding GDPR in a global way, and another one around this, since well, how 27701 can be applied, knowing that each country has its own specific legislation or laws. What can you tell us about all this?
That's
questions in a row.
Yeah, yes. That's why I had this slide with is a certification means that you are legally compliant. No, no, it doesn't. But it really helps, because I'm sorry, I'm a little bit like Hamlet now. We're getting a little bit philosophical. What is compliant with the law? If you ask a lawyer, they usually say it depends, because there is no really black and white.
Yeah.
And but using the standard, you will have a systematic approach to judging if you are more likely to be on the compliant side than on the not compliant side. And of course, you have to then address your specific legislation. And the good thing within Europe is that we have GDPR. So if I'm doing business with Portugal and I'm using 27701, and you know that GDPR is basically the same. All right, we have some kind of maybe minor differences, but in principle, it's the same. So in terms of, again, that trustworthiness, I think I have a good basis for trustworthiness doing business with some company in Portugal.
Okay, that's it. That's a good basis for organizing the compliance with the law, but not a compliance seal, of course.
No, it's not a seal. No, it's not a seal.
Okay.
But you know, maybe also then what you say, if you have a high risk for not being compliant with the law, then of course you have to address that to the top management. And if you're taking GDPR, yeah, we know all that about the fees and all that stuff that could happen to the company. So I mean, that's a really serious risk you're having that, and you will know that.
Okay, and I see here no more questions for now, so maybe I will pass it again to Daniela. Thank you very much, and it was very, very good presentation. Very nice to have you here.
Yes, I said I wish I was there, but I'm okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.